All right, welcome to Unit 6. This week we're going to be learning a new application. That's right, just when you thought you weren't going to have to learn any more applications in this program, we do have one more for you. Fortunately, this one is kind of fun and it's pretty intuitive. I think most of you will pick up this pretty quickly. Much less technical, much more user-friendly than most of the other applications you're using in the program. This one is called SketchUp. It's been around for a number of years and it is the primary tool that most architectural firms use for conceptual design. So this is a way that we can throw something together very quickly and pretty accurately and show it's really kind of for the exterior of buildings to kind of show different ideas quickly about the different styles that you could use and colors and different things on a building. So let's go ahead and jump into it. We're going to start off by getting yourself an account. So what you're going to have to do first, of course, is go to the Trimble website. Trimble is the current owner of the SketchUp application. So what I'd like for you to do is go to app.sketchup.com. I'm going to type it into the URL into the screen here real quick. So it's app.sketchup, SKETCHUP.com. Whoops, I spelled it wrong. .com, just like that. It'll take you to this page, and of course you'll need to click on this link right here, create a Trimble ID. If it looks a little bit different, I'm sure you'll be able to stumble your way through there, but we need to create that ID first. You can use whatever email address that you want. Just know that when you graduate, a little time after you graduate, your email address at Western Dakota Tech will go away, and so there won't be that third level of verification. If they send you a verification code to your WDT email address, obviously it's going to go to nowhere. So consider using your permanent email address for this. Of course, that's only if you intend to continue using SketchUp with this account beyond your time at Western Dakota. Once you've created that account, you'll go ahead and come back to this page and log in using your email address that you put in. And I'm going to pause this and get logged in myself so we're looking at the same thing. So I did notice when I just logged in that it sent the verification code actually to my phone number through a text. Depends on how you create your account, I suppose, but you may be able to use your WDT email address if that would be your preference. So as you can kind of tell, I use SketchUp quite a lot for various things, and there are a lot of different sort of like little personal projects that I use SketchUp for, in addition to occasionally some stuff for work, but it is just so fast and so intuitive once you get the hang of it, that you'll find yourself using this. This will be kind of your go-to perhaps if you do kind of some design work on the side or you're just kind of for yourself occasionally. And I do apologize for my voice. I know it's really annoying to listen to somebody who's sick, but this just kind of came on this morning, so I really don't have a choice. We're just going to have to suffer through it together. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start a new project right up here under Create New. We'll drop this down. You can see that there are various templates that you can use. We're going to go ahead and use the architectural feet and inches. That's the one we're going to be most used to inputting distances and things into, so we'll go ahead and use that. Once you're in there, you're going to see this gentleman playing looks like either a ukulele or something like that, and this is just in there for size, and you can click on it. You can see that it's just a two-dimensional object. What I'd like for you to do now with your mouse, go ahead and click on your scroll wheel button and then just move your cursor around. You can see that you can orbit around, but that two-dimensional object just remains facing you. That's only there again because when we zoom in and out, it's a little bit hard to tell where you are relative to the actual size of things. So that's just kind of in there as a reference. You can delete it whenever you want, simply by selecting it and clicking delete, which is how we delete everything. So that's your first skill you just learned. You'll notice it is a lot of the skills that we learn in SketchUp are going to be very intuitive because we've learned how to do things in Revit and AutoCAD, and things operate pretty much similarly to those. So let's take a quick tour of the user interface. Over here on the left side, you'll have your drawing and editing toolbars, and these are not all of the tools that you have. There are additional tools down here at the bottom. If you click this triple dot button, you can see it opens up a whole list of other tools, and oftentimes your most frequently used tools are going to be appended to this toolbar, so we can get in there and edit that if we need to. The drawing settings bar is over here on the right, and we'll get into sort of slowly wade into each of those. Feel free to tour those if you'd like to on your own, but they all have little hints. They have symbols, of course, but then they have little hints over here on what those actually are doing. If you want to get rid of those at some point, once you get the hang of this, you just click this double arrow and it'll kind of take them away. You can always bring that back if you forget. And then the third area I want to talk about is down here at the bottom where it says measurements. That's what they call the status bar. And you'll be referring to that little bar down here occasionally. And then you also have over here on the left, you kind of have, it's telling you kind of what it's expecting. So both two things kind of down at the bottom you want to not forget about. Just because they're at the bottom doesn't mean they're not important. Up at the top, of course, that would be sort of like what you could consider the file menu. If you click on this builder button right here, you can see it gives you all the standard stuff that you would see if you clicked file in any of the other applications. All right, so what about out here in the business end of this thing? Well, what we're seeing are 3 axes, and you should be familiar with that, both using AutoCAD, Revit, Creo, but you have the X, which is always going to be a red line. You have the green, which is going to be the y-axis, and then you have the blue, which is going to be the z-axis, obviously. So as we rotate around this thing and we start kind of looking at this thing from different angles, it's important to kind of keep that color in mind so that you know where you are, because it's easy in three-dimensional space to kind of get lost sometimes. Okay, so let's dig into this thing. Let's go ahead and draw some stuff. We're going to start off with this first tool up here at the top of the toolbar. It's the line tool. And if you click a point in space, the default is going to be, it's going to place that line sort of at the ground level. So if you kind of rotate your view around like this, you can see that we can be drawing like on the ground. So we'll click our first point here, and we'll just move our cursor around, and we'll click a second point, and now we've drawn a line. To terminate the command, you'll go ahead and just click the selection tool, this little arrow, and then that's done. And if you rotate around, you can kind of see that, oh, it did not actually place that on the ground level. So drawing in three-dimensional space with SketchUp can be a little tricky in that way, in that you can't really tell what it is you're drawing on until you get your first thing down there. I always like to draw my first stuff, like if I'm going to create a shape or something like that, I always like to start at the intersection of the 3 axes, and that makes sure that you know what plane you're drawing on. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that again. We'll go ahead and click on the line tool, and this time you can see it snaps to the origin point, and now I can kind of move my cursor around. Now you'll notice that my cursor sort of changes color and snaps into position at various locations, right? So right now I'm on the green axis, right now I'm on the red, and right here I'm just either perpendicular or parallel to the existing line that I drew. And I can also go up to the blue axis. So let's go ahead and click this point out here that's parallel to our first line. And what you're going to notice is that they're not really parallel. You can see that this one is sort of converging on this one, and at some point way out here in space they would maybe touch. And so what that tells me is that I'm not drawing in parallel projection, I'm actually drawing in what we call perspective. And we've talked about that a little bit in the past. Let's go ahead and change it to parallel projection because it is much easier to model that way. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop down this little camera. In case you didn't catch that, what I clicked on was this tool right here. Looks like a little director's cut device. We'll pop this camera down. We'll just change this to parallel projection. Now you can see that all of the lines that you draw now are going to look parallel when they are. All right, let's go ahead and draw a rectangle next, and that's right under line, obviously. And so I'm going to pick a point kind of in the same general vicinity, but I'm going to come out in a different direction. I'm going to come down south of the x-axis and click my second point. You'll notice when you create a closed loop on a single plane like this rectangle is, it's going to fill that inner boundary with a surface. So I can actually, now that I've terminated that command, I can click on that surface and it selects it. I can also click on the individual lines that make up that boundary, and you can see those getting selected as well. To deselect things, you just pick in an open space. So that in that way, it's very similar to Revit. So we can select an edge of a boundary, or we can select the face of a boundary individually and separately. In fact, if I don't want that boundary to be filled with a surface, I can select it and click delete. And now it's just a hollow, as you can see, boundary, right? Let's take a look at the circle tool next. We don't, let's see, oh, it's down here at the bottom, so they don't really put these things in a very logical order, but you can find them if you look. I'm going to click on the circle tool. If you don't see the circle tool in your toolbar, click on the 3 buttons down at the bottom and you'll see it up there at the top. And now, no matter where I click, it's going to place the center point of that circle, and then I'm going to define the radius of that circle, okay, just by clicking a second point. Again, just like any other enclosed boundary, it's going to create a surface by default. Similar behavior with the polygon tool. And this one you can see down at the bottom here where it says sides. I can change the number of sides to whatever I want. If I want it to be 8-sided object, I do that first, but then it's created exactly like the circle. Pick the center point, and then we pick the radius out to one of the corners. We can also create arcs, and there are a few different ways that we can do that. And I'm not going to demonstrate all of them, but you can experiment with those on your own. The 3-point arc may be the most intuitive one that you're used to. So you click 2 points and then you'd sort of fill that radius with whatever angle that you want. And all of these things you can sort of see down in the bottom right hand corner. It's giving you a listening dimension to kind of show you where you're at. And as you might have guessed, you can type in a number at this point to get a specific angle, like 45. Okay, let's move on and do something a little bit more exciting than all of that. What I'd like for you to do now is go ahead and draw another shape out here in space. Let's go ahead and start with a rectangle. And I'm going to start off at the corner of this just to make sure it's on the ground plane. And I'm going to just click my second point right here. You'll notice that anytime you edit a closed boundary, it's going to bring that surface back. Okay, but at this point, now I can use this next tool. It's called the push-pull tool. This is one we use quite often. And this is basically going to turn a 2-dimensional object, like a rectangle, any enclosed boundary, into a 3-dimensional object. So you click inside the boundary, not press and drag, but click, and then you can move your cursor up and it'll just sort of follow however tall you want that thing to be. Go ahead and type in a number like 10 and hit enter. That's going to default to 10 inches. If you wanted it to be 10 feet, you would type in that foot mark, just like we do in AutoCAD. All right, so I've lofted that thing up. I can loft it again if I wanted to actually meant 10 feet. You know, I could Control Z, do it again, 10 feet. So now it's up like this. Cool thing about SketchUp is that you can draw on the surfaces of existing 3-dimensional objects. So let's go ahead and draw a circle on the side face. Make sure that you don't go beyond the boundary of the little rectangle we're drawing on. So now we've got a circle on the side of that cube, and we can use the push-pull tool to just pull that out or push it in to create a subtractive effect. Go ahead and pause this video and experiment with that a little bit. Draw some stuff, get a feel for how that push-pull tool works, and drawing on the faces of 3-dimensional objects works. Okay, so if you have a feel for that now, let's go ahead and draw with purpose. We're going to draw a rectangle, but this time we're going to draw it a specific size. So what I'm going to do is, I am just going to pick out here in space since I've used up all my area around the axes intersection. And I'm just going to pick a point right here, and I'm just clicking, I'm not clicking and dragging, and I'm going to move my cursor off in the direction that I want to go. Now pay attention to the numbers in the bottom right of the screen. You can see one's a big number and one's a little number. So you can see that SketchUp is giving me the X direction first. But unfortunately, it doesn't always do that. Sometimes it depends on your perspective, where your camera or your eyes are currently positioned. So you really got to pay attention to that to know which number to throw in there first. Otherwise, it's going to draw the rectangle in the wrong direction. Let's go ahead and draw the rectangle 20 feet wide and 40 feet long. So we'll go 20 feet in the X direction, 40 feet in the Y direction. So we just type 20 feet, comma, 40 feet. Enter. And now we have a rectangle of a very specific size, right? Rather than just sketching, now we're actually drawing. Let's go ahead and loft that or push-pull that up 10 feet. So we'll click here. Remember, we're not clicking and dragging. We have to click and let go. And then move our cursor up and type 10, put in the foot mark, and hit enter. Now let's draw a line from the midpoint of the front of this cube to the midpoint of the back along that top plane. So we'll use the line tool, and hover your cursor until you see it snap to the midpoint. It should turn like a cyan color. And we'll just move our cursor back. You can see it's following the green axis all the way to the midpoint of the back, like so. And now we'll click on the selection tool to cancel that command. And what you'll notice is that now we've divided that surface into two separate faces, right? We've got a line running down the middle, and we've got two separate surfaces on the sides. Okay, so hover your cursor as close as you can with the very tip of the arrow over the top of that line we just drew, and select it like so. And now we're going to use the move tool. The move tool right here can move an object in any direction, but in this case we're going to try to move it straight up along the blue axis. So we'll go ahead and click move, and then we're going to pick a point out here in space. You don't have to click on the thing, it's better if you don't. And then we're just going to search around until we feel our cursor snap to that blue axis. And you can see what's happening now. It's actually stretching the ends of our shape, and it's lofting those surfaces up along that selected line. So now we can type a number like 5 feet, hit enter, and now we have sort of like a house type of a shape going on. Keep in mind that the push-pull tool is always going to push or pull perpendicular to the surface that you're selecting. So let's go ahead and just experiment with this real quick. We'll click that push-pull tool. We'll select this side. We'll call it the roof. And then we'll just pull up. You see what's happening here. It's really deforming this thing, but it's pulling it in the direction you would expect. And you can do the same thing as a subtractive method, right? So I'm going to just undo that, Control Z, bring that back, but I just did want to sort of demonstrate what happens as you get more and more sort of complicated with your shape. We can also copy objects, and the way that we do that, this is probably one of the least intuitive things that we do in SketchUp, but the move tool and the copy tool are the same tool. We just have to tap the control key to toggle between them. So the default is move. If we select an object and we click move, you can see that you have the move icon, but go ahead and at this point tap the control key, and you can see a little plus symbol showed up next to the move tool. That means we're in copy mode, and now we just have to pick two locations, and we can type a distance in at this point, like 50 feet, and now that is an exact copy of those objects. Notice what I did to select those objects. I had to draw a crossing window around the entire thing. We could have also drawn a window like this, but then we're not getting this right edge. So you really got to pay attention to your selection. Make sure that when you copy things or move things, you're getting all of it, because remember, they are individual objects. So this is a good time to discuss groups. We can create two things within the user interface of SketchUp. One of them is called a group, and then one of them is called a component. And the difference between those things, they do exactly what you would expect. It sort of creates it into a block. It makes multiple objects grouped into one object. So does component. But component functions more like a block in AutoCAD, in that if you make a copy of it, now if you edit that component, all of the existing copies of that component will also update, right? Groups do not. Groups make a one-off copy or group of a bunch of individual objects that don't have an effect on any other objects. And that's a key element of working in SketchUp, because it is individual objects, and any new object we create attaches to that. Sometimes we don't want that behavior. Sometimes we want the three-dimensional objects we create to remain independent of the things that are touching them. And SketchUp does fuse to anything that's touching it. So any SketchUp object is going to fuse to another SketchUp object if they're touching. And we saw that demonstrated over here when we created that second rectangle. Fortunately, creating components and creating groups is really easy. It's fast and easy. So I'm going to go ahead and create first a group out of this object. And I'm just going to select it all and then right click, and I'm going to say make group. We are going to give it a name. Nope, we don't have to name the groups, just the components. So now if I copy, remember how we copy, we're going to use the move tool, tap the control key, and then pick 2 points. I've made a copy of that group, and now I want to do the same thing over here, but let's do component. Let's make a component out of this. We'll right click and we'll say make component. This one we do have to name, so we're just going to call this house. And I'm going to make a copy of this as well. Struggling here a little bit, but control 50 feet. All right. So now I've got a copy of my component that I created over here, and I've got a copy, group component. All right. Let's go ahead and edit this component right here. We'll double click on it, it goes into edit mode. We'll use the push pull tool to pull the face out, or push the face back maybe. And you can see what's happening. The other component is kind of following along with whatever change we make. Okay. To end that edit mode, we just click away from it, and now we're back. Right. Let's go ahead and do the same thing over here. We'll double click on this group, and we'll use the push pull tool to push it in. You can see that that is a unique object, so it doesn't affect any other object. So you have to build your strategy around that behavior. Sometimes we want all of the thing that we copied to update. If we have to make a change to one, we want all the other ones to change. And then sometimes we don't want that behavior. Sometimes we want it to be a one-off thing because none of the other things really have any bearing on that. All right, let's do just a little bit more instruction, then we're going to draw something for real. This component right here, I might want to put another line. Let's say I wanted to put a line a specific distance from the corner on this face. All right, so one thing I can do is sort of mark that location using one of the inquiry tools. We're going to use the measure tool, which conveniently looks like a tape measure. So we'll go ahead and click on that tape measure. We'll pick our first point right here, and then we'll come over here and we're going to type 4 feet and hit enter. You'll notice that a little dot showed up right there. It's a little bit hard to see probably, but there is a dot there. Now if I want to draw a line, it's going to snap to that dot. So now I can easily, there's not a great better way or other way to do that other than use the measure tool. You can draw a line along another line, but now you've got an overlapping line and it's broken this line into multiple pieces. And in most cases, we don't want to break lines into multiple pieces end to end. We want them to stay one line. Just keep the model simpler. As you might have guessed, we can also use the measure tool to see how long things are. So if I sort of just come down here and hover, I don't even have to click my second point. If I just come down here and hover, it'll give me a little preview. That's exactly 20 feet. This is exactly 10 feet. We can do it along angled lines as well. So 2 purposes for that measure tool. One of them is to mark a location for the purpose of creating additional things at a specific distance, and then the other one is just to measure things. By the way, if you want to close these boxes that fly out if they get in the way, you can just click on the symbol again. So click it a second time, it just toggles on and off. All right, so we don't always draw in 3-dimensional views. Sometimes it's more effective, sometimes it's easier to draw in a 2-dimensional view. And to accomplish that, we just there's not really a place where we store views necessarily. We do have some standard views that we can store. And those are going to be found under the scenes tool also. So if you click on that under standard views here, drop that down, you can see that we can go to plan view, or look at it straight up from the top, straight down from the top rather. We have different elevation views. And so as long as when you're drawing these things, you're following the 3 axes, you'll always be able to have access to these views. And sometimes it just makes a lot of sense to kind of get into that position when you're drawing something if it's really complicated. No matter what view you're looking at, you can always get back to a 3D view simply by clicking and dragging your scroll wheel button. That's always a thing. You'll notice too, I didn't even mention zoom. I think it's just so intuitive it almost goes without saying, but zooming in and out, in SketchUp, it works just like AutoCAD and Revit. It's directional. So where you place your cursor matters. That's where you're going to zoom in and out from. So at this point, what I'd like for you to do is go back over a lot of the things. I know I went through that fairly quickly. The intent there is that you can pause this video anytime you want. So if a lot of that made sense, go back and practice some of those skills. Just get a feel for what's going on inside the user interface and how it works. And then once you're done, once you feel fairly comfortable and ready to move on, come on back and resume this video and we're going to draw a house. So this is basically what we're going to create today. We're going to just draw a rectangular shaped house, kind of similar to what we started in the previous practice part. But we're going to go ahead and add a door, and we're going to add some surface texture and things like that to it when we're done. So we're going to try to get this thing done. It's going to take us about 10 or 15 minutes to draw something like this. So we'll walk through it together. Hopefully that'll give you enough of a head start on things to where you can really kind of take off and run with this. So the first thing I'm going to do is select everything. I'm going to zoom way out. I'm going to select everything and just use the move tool to kind of get all this other stuff out of the way a little bit. We're going to draw this thing right off of the axis, which kind of tends to make the most sense when we're doing stuff like this. So the first thing we're going to do is, what I'd like for you to do is draw the rectangle that's going to be sort of the footprint of this house. And I want you to make it 30 feet wide and 46 feet long. Okay, so 30 in the X direction, 46 in the other. We'll use the rectangle tool for that. We'll kind of move it out in this direction here. We can be certain that the narrow direction is X in this case. And we'll just type 30 feet, comma, 46 feet. Enter. Okay, now it might not look like the right shape to you. It's always good to check, get up above it and make sure that your proportions look like they're going in the right direction. Looks like it is here. All right. And what we'll do next is we'll just pull that thing up 10 feet. Just use nice round numbers to make it easy. Make sure you put the foot mark in there. SketchUp does default to inches. And then just like before, we're going to create that ridge line from midpoint to midpoint, front to back. Now I've already done the math on this. I know that if I pull this ridge up 7.5 feet, it'll give me an approximately 6 and 12 slope. And we find ourselves doing that sometimes. You can get an exact slope. It just takes a lot longer, and it's oftentimes not worth the effort because we are doing conceptual design typically when we're doing SketchUp. So let's go ahead and select that ridge, and then we're going to move it straight up along the blue axis, 7.5 feet. Enter. All right, so we've got the basis of our house. Now we got a lot of work to do. That roof doesn't have an overhang, for example, so that's kind of what we're going to tackle next. So this next part is the trickiest that we've done so far. What I need for you to do is select all 6 of the lines that define the outer boundary of the roof. So all of the lines that define the roof except for the ridge line. We're not going to select that one. So we'll click this first one, and you'll notice you do have to hold down the control key to select multiple objects. So hold down that control key. Make sure the tip of your arrow is as close to the line as possible. If you accidentally select a face when you do that, you can hold the shift key and deselect it. Okay, so control is add to the selection, shift is remove from the selection. Once you have all 6 of those lines selected and nothing else, what we're going to do is we're going to copy them straight down along the blue axis 6 inches. So we're going to go to the move tool. We'll tap the control key to turn it into the copy tool, and then we'll pick a point in space up here and just move our cursor. Make sure you're on the blue axis, and we'll just type either 6 inches or just 6 and hit enter. So those lines we just copied down did separate all of the surfaces into individual surfaces, as you can tell here. And that was the point, was to separate all 4 sides of this house into separate entities from what we would call the roof sort of boundary up here. Now this next part, the sequence that you use does matter. We're going to push the walls in. We made this house intentionally larger than we intended it to be by a couple feet, by 3 feet. So we're going to push the walls in 18 inches, but you have to do the sides first. And if you want to test that theory, go ahead and try it the other way and you'll see kind of why we do it that way. But we're going to use the push-pull tool. And again, remember how this works. We click on the surface, not push on it, right? Click and let go. And then you move it in the direction you want it to push and then type your distance. We're going to do it 18 inches. You can just type 18 and hit enter. And then we'll do the other side next. Click, move, 18, enter. And then we'll do the front and the back. Same way. Push, move, 18. Spin it around. Push, click, move, 18. All right, so this is starting to look like a house, right? With a roof, with an overhang, just like we would draw in any other application. All right, let's go ahead and add a door and a window to this thing. And for this, we're going to have to go to a place that we haven't seen yet. It's called 3D Warehouse. Their library of components, yes, they have components. Saves you a lot of time in creating everything manually. So for doors and windows, that's certainly one good application for components because there's a lot of detail to these things. Go ahead and click on 3D Warehouse, and I've already been here, so it's going to take me here. It's probably somewhat annoyingly going to try to put you through a survey of some kind, so just go ahead and close that window. And once you get to the main window, go ahead and type into the search box just door. We'll just kind of start with that, and you'll probably get something that looks similar to this. What you're going to do is pick the door that you want. I'm going to go ahead and agree to this. And you can see that there's a number of them that show up here. So you can just kind of pick one that you like. I'm going to go ahead and pick this one. Well, what you're going to do is you're going to click the download tool. And what that's going to do is it's going to pull it down and it's going to start the insert command. Okay, so now you can see I have a door here and it will snap to other objects, right? And so right at this point, I could just bring it down here and click. But what I really want to do is put it in a specific location. So I'm going to cancel this and I'm going to go back and I'm going to use my measure tool to create a point that is 6 feet from the corner. So I'm just going to come over here and I'm just going to type 6 feet just like we did before. It creates that little point right there. And then I'll come back to the 3D Warehouse, find that door again. It's already downloaded, but I'm going to go ahead and just click it again. And now I'm going to try to pick, and sometimes it helps when you spin around, like so. I'm going to pick a point right here, and now it placed that door. Now this particular door, a lot of times what these doors will do is they'll embed into the wall. This one didn't seem to do that. So I'm actually going to just delete this one. I'm going to pick a different door, I think. We'll go back to 3D Warehouse, and I'm just going to try this one right here. Maybe we'll have better luck with it. This one didn't embed either. So we're just going to accept that for now. We're not going to try to fight with SketchUp on this particular issue. Let's go ahead and do the same thing with a window. Just like any online library, you're going to have mixed results with what you get because a lot of this stuff is user generated and it's free. And I don't know why I can't get rid of this message, but we'll just leave it there for now. Search for windows. We'll just grab kind of the first one of the first ones that shows up here. We'll go ahead and grab this one here. Okay, download. And you can see that it's sort of attaching to sort of this, it's going to go onto the surface. If we kind of moved it over here, oh, it's not. I think we have to have it. And again, it just really kind of depends on the quality of the object that you're creating. So obviously I didn't practice this ahead of time, but you get the idea. We're just going to leave it there for now. We're going to just keep going with this model rather than trying to focus in on this particular skill. But do experiment with different components that you can download out of that library and just kind of see how each of them reacts a little bit differently. I'm going to change to a south elevation view just to kind of get this window in a better position. And it must not be south that I'm looking for. There we go. I clicked the wrong one. And I actually can't see the window I just brought in. I'm not sure why. It must have gone into that wall too far or something like that. But I'm just going to try to move this down so it's a little bit closer to the top of this door. So we'll just kind of maybe start right here and then we'll bring it over 4 feet. Something like that. All right, so for whatever reason, when I moved that thing, it seems to have embedded in the wall the way that it was supposed to now. So we're not going to ask why. We're just going to accept the win. And then we'll close this panel. Now sometimes we get into our model and we realize that, you know, this thing doesn't really look the way that I want it to right here. A lot of times you'll see that soffit come all the way out to the face of the overhang, and so there's a little triangle that gets pulled out right here. And I want to create that effect. I'm not a big fan of these where they come right to a point pushed even with the wall. So what I'm going to do to create that is I'm going to actually draw a line up right here to this point so that I can separate those two things from each other. And I just bring it up here until it hits. You can see it just kind of snap to the edge. And now you can see it's a separate entity. So when we push-pull things, a lot of times what we're going to do is we're going to pull them out to or back into another entity. So what I'm going to do is click and let go. So I have this thing kind of coming out, and you can feel it sort of snap. It won't go out past on the first pull. It's limited to that 1'6". And in fact, you can ensure that it goes to the same face by hovering over that surface and clicking. Okay, so now I've got two surfaces that are exactly coplanar, and I can delete the dividing line now. I can just select it and click delete. Okay, so what I've done was I've created that sort of extended soffit all the way out to the face of the rake. Let's go ahead and do that on the other side as well, just for a little practice. So again, what we did, we just drew that line up to separate the two surfaces, and then we used push-pull to bring this out to this surface. And then we use the selection tool to delete the line. Let's go ahead and create some corner trim now. A couple different ways we could do that, but I think the easiest will be to just create a distance that we want for that corner trim using the measure tool. So remember how we did that? We just clicked here and we came in the direction we want to go, and I'm going to make my corner trim, let's say 3.5. over. So now I've got a point there. Now I can just draw a line all the way from that new point. Whoops. Thought I clicked the line tool. There we go. And we just go up along the blue axis. Make sure that you're positioned so where you can see where it hits. Up along the blue axis until it hits right there. Okay. Now I've got what looks like corner trim. And if I really want to make it look realistic, I can use push-pull to pull that thing out however far I want. Let's say 0.75. So now it actually has depth. And it didn't take very long to do that. I would say that's actually easier than what we do in Revit to create corner trim, wouldn't you say? All right, let's go ahead and create the other side of that now. So again, we'll use our measure tool, and we'll just come back here 3.5. And then we'll use the line tool to come up until we hit the intersection along the blue axis right here. Pull that one out 3/4 of an inch as well. And that does kind of throw off the size a little bit on the width, but we're going to leave it. All right. So we've got corner trim. Go ahead and do the other 4 corners as well, using the same way. And then also go ahead and fix the soffit on the opposite end as well. And that'll be good practice for everybody. So the last thing we'll talk about for this demo is going to be the materials, assigning materials to the various surfaces. And as you might imagine, each surface, each individual surface, including this surface, anything you can select individually, can have a different material applied to it. So when you're applying materials to an object, if it's grouped or if it's a component, you can apply that material and it's going to go to all surfaces. However, if you've created a component that has individual surfaces that need different materials applied to them, you have to apply those materials in the editor. So in other words, if we wanted to edit this door, we could double click on it. It's actually not going to let me, but if you created a component within your model like this one, now we could apply those materials to different surfaces. Okay, but if you apply material to either a component or a group, it's just going to put it on the same material on all surfaces. Okay, so because we didn't do that over here, we can just simply apply the materials however we want. So we'll go ahead and click on materials. Material editor is a little bit weird to get used to because it kind of starts off and it makes you think, well, we only have colors in here, right? But then when we click on the browse tool, that'll open up a few other things, categories of various material types. Okay, so let's start with the roof maybe. Go down to roofing. We'll see a few different materials. I'm just going to pick this one right here, asphalt shingles. And then all we have to do is just use the paint bucket tool right on the surface. Click to place it. Okay. Let's go ahead and see if we can find some siding that makes sense. That's going to be under the brick, cladding, and siding. And I'm just going to go ahead and select this one right here. And we can apply that same thing to all the surfaces. Obviously, you're going to want to do that after you've created all your door trim or all your corner trim. And if you're going to do trim around your doors and windows, you would obviously create that before you'd apply the material. So materials is kind of like hatch. You wait till the last step before you apply it to your model. But that's really all there is to it. So that should give you a really good jump start on using SketchUp for conceptual design. Obviously, there's quite a lot more to know than that, and there's just if you think there's a lot of tutorials out there for Revit on YouTube and on the internet, man, wait till you search for SketchUp. It's a real popular program. Lots and lots of people, lots of enthusiasts out there. And in fact, go do a Google search, and some of the stuff that people create in SketchUp is just absolutely mind-blowing. You can take this as far as you want to take it. Obviously, there's quite a lot of versatility that comes with an application like this. So, but I would definitely recommend beyond this week, beyond just this one lesson, embracing this thing, especially if your intention is to go into architectural design at some point. People love knowing that you know how to use this application. It's definitely something you should put on your resume. All right, we're going to leave it there for today. Go ahead and take your screenshot, and yeah, we're all set here. We'll see you all next time in class.